When a black veteran walks into a fancy restaurant for lunch, he just hopes for a peaceful meal. Instead, he is met with brutal discrimination from the restaurant owner, a man who looks down on him because of his skin color and status. What the restaurant owner doesn't expect is that this man is not alone. His son, a powerful and influential figure, is ready to stand up and demand justice for his father. The ending will leave you emotional and thoughtful. Watch until the end to witness the dramatic reversal. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to follow more inspiring stories. A story full of emotion, justice, and unexpected twists is waiting for you to discover. Let's get started. On a crisp autumn morning in the quiet town, a 65-year-old black veteran walked into a cafe expecting nothing more than a slice of apple pie and a cup of coffee, but instead of warm smiles and friendly chatter, he was met with cold stares and sharper words. The owner looked him in the eye and told him to leave and never come back. Stunned and humiliated, he returned home determined to change things. What happened next really made the owner realize he had made a grave mistake. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy. Don't forget to tell us where you're watching from in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. The autumn air was crisp as Henry Walker parked his old reliable pickup truck outside Riverbend Cafe, a small diner nestled in the heart of Haven Creek. For years this place had been a cornerstone of the community, a spot for coffee, comfort, food, and familiar faces. Henry, a 65-year-old black veteran with a warm demeanor and an ever-present cap embroidered with his service branch, had been a loyal customer for as long as he could remember. As he stepped out of his truck, Henry paused to take in the quaint charm of the cafe. The aroma of coffee and freshly baked goods wafted through the air, mingling with the golden hues of the leaves scattered across the sidewalk. It was the kind of place where everyone knew your name, or so Henry had always believed. The familiar jingle of the bell above the door announced his arrival. As he stepped inside, he nodded to a few regulars seated at the tables, their quiet conversations briefly pausing to acknowledge him. Henry made his way to the counter and settled onto his usual stool, his joints creaking slightly with age. Morning, Adam. Henry greeted the owner with a friendly smile. I'll take the usual coffee and a slice of that apple pie. Smells like you just pulled it out of the oven. Adam crossed the CA's middle-aged owner emerged from the kitchen. His face, usually calm and welcoming, was stiff with a coldness Henry had never seen before. Damp hands gripped the counter as his eyes locked onto Henry with an unsettling intensity. We're out of pie, Adam said flatly, his voice lacking the warmth Henry was used to. Henry blinked, glancing toward the display case. Just a few feet away, sitting there golden and perfect, was a freshly baked apple pie. Confused, he gestured toward Ed. Looks like there's one right there, Henry said, chuckling nervously. A damp jaw tightened. I said we're out, he snapped, his voice rising enough to draw the attention of the other patrons. The cafe grew quiet. Conversations halted. His heads turned toward the counter. Henry shifted uncomfortably in his seat, unsure of what he'd done to provoke such hostility. Adam, is everything okay? Henry asked, his tone calm but tinged with confusion. Adam leaned in closer, his knuckles white against the edge of the counter. Listen, Henry, he said, his voice low and cutting, I think it's best if you don't come here anymore. I don't serve your kind. The words struck Henry like a physical blow. For a moment, he couldn't speak, couldn't move. The familiar, welcoming atmosphere of the cafe felt like it had been stripped away, leaving only a heavy silence and the weight of Adam's words. Henry slowly stood, his weathered hand trembling as he picked up his cap. I don't understand, he said, his voice quiet but steady. I've been coming here for years. Have I done something to offend you? Adam straightened, crossing his arms over his chest. You've done plenty just by walking in here, he said sharply. Now get out before I call the sheriff. The air in the cafe was thick with tension. Some patrons looked away, avoiding Henry's gaze, while others sat frozen in shock. A young woman at a nearby table stood abruptly, her voice shaking as she addressed Adam. This isn't right, she said. You can't treat him like this. Adam turned on her, his face flushed with anger. This is my cafe and I'll run it how I see fit. If you don't like it, you can leave too. The woman hesitated, her courage faltering under Adam's glare. Slowly, she sat back down, her face burning with shame. Henry adjusted his cap, his shoulders heavy with the weight of the moment. I'll go, he said quietly, but this isn't over. As he turned and walked out the door, the bell jingled one last time, echoing in the silent cafe outside. The cool autumn air did little to soothe the sting of what had just happened. Henry climbed into his truck, gripping the steering wheel tightly. As he sat there replaying Adam's words in his mind for a moment, Henry felt the familiar ache of injustice, a reminder of the struggles he thought were long behind him. But then something shifted, his jaw set with determination and a quiet fire sparked in his eyes. This wasn't the end of the story. Inside the cafe, Adam tried to return to his routine, but the unease in the room was palpable. Some patrons hastily paid their bills and left their disapproving glances lingering on him as they walked out. Others remained there silent, speaking louder than words. Adam muttered to himself, justifying his actions. I did what my father would have wanted, he thought. This is my cafe, my rules. But deep down he couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling in his chest, a sense that he just made a mistake far bigger than he realized. Little did Adam know his actions that day would set off a chain of events that would forever change Haven Creek, forcing the entire town to confront its deepest biases and prejudices, and for Henry Walker it marked the beginning of a fight he was more than ready to take on. Henry Walker sat quietly in his truck, the weight of the moment pressing down on him like a heavy fog. He gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white as the humiliation and disbelief of what had just happened washed over him in waves. The warm memories of Haven Creek, the town he had proudly called home for decades now, felt distant and hollow, but Henry was not a man to let injustice pass unchallenged. With a determined exhale he pulled out his phone and dialed a familiar number. James, he said when his son answered. We need to talk. That evening Henry sat at his modest dining table with his son James Walker, who had arrived from the city within hours. James, a charismatic and accomplished senator known for his advocacy for civil rights and veterans issues, listened intently as his father recounted what had happened. When Henry finished, James's face was set in a hard line. "Dad, this is unacceptable. Adam Cross can't treat you or anyone like that. Haven Creek deserves better." Henry nodded, but remained calm. "I know, son, but I also know anger alone won't fix this. We need a plan." James leaned back in his chair, his mind already racing. "I'll handle it, Dad. I'll make some calls, get the right people involved. This isn't just about you. This is about every person in this town who faced discrimination and kept quiet." Henry placed a steady hand on James's arm. "I trust you, son, but remember, this isn't about revenge, it's about making things right." The next morning Have Creek was buzzing. Word of what had happened at Riverbend Cafe spread like wildfire at the grocery store, on street corners, and in the check hard people whispered in hushed tones. Some were appalled by Adam's actions, questioning how someone they thought they knew could behave so cruelly. Others defended him, claiming he was simply upholding tradition or protecting his rights as a business owner. At the heart of the storm, Adam Cross found himself increasingly isolated. His cafe, usually bustling with customers, was eerily quiet. Regular patrons avoided his gaze, some choosing not to show up at all. Even his loyal staff began to shift uncomfortably under the weight of what had happened. "People will get over it," Adam muttered to himself, though the doubt in his voice betrayed him. But as the days went on it became clear this wasn't something Haven Creek would forget so easily. James wasted no time. Within days he organized a community meeting at Haven Creek's town hall. The space was packed with residents, many of whom had never attended a public forum before. Some came out of support for Henry, others out of curiosity, and a few to defend Adam. Standing at the front of the room, James addressed the crowd. His voice was calm but commanding, filled with the confidence of a man who had spoken in countless chambers before. "What happened to my father at Riverbend Cafe wasn't just a personal insult," James began. "It was a reflection of something deeper, a legacy of prejudice that has lingered in this town for far too long, and today we have a choice. We can ignore it, or we can confront it together." A murmur spread through the crowd. Some nodded in agreement, while others crossed their arms defensively. From the back of the room a man's voice called out, "What are you trying to do? Walker ruin Adam's business? He has every right to serve whoever he wants." James turned toward the voice, his gaze steady. "You're right, he does have the legal right. But let me ask you this, is that the kind of town we want to be a place where people are turned away because of the color of their skin, because of where they come from?" The room grew quiet. "Riverbend Cafe isn't just Adam Cross's business," James continued. "It's a symbol of our community, and right now that symbol stands for division and prejudice, but it doesn't have to. Together we can turn it into something better." Meanwhile, at Riverbend Cafe, Adam sat alone in his office, his hands trembling as he reread the headlines on his phone. "Local cafe owner faces backlash for discrimination against veteran." Divided Haven Creek, a town at a crossroads. The weight of his choices was closing in, but Adam refused to back down. When one of his waitresses, Sarah, approached him with a resigned expression, he bristled. "Adam," Sarah said cautiously, "I think we need to talk. People are upset, and honestly, I can't blame them. What you did to Henry was—" Adam slammed his hand on the desk, cutting her off. "This is my cafe, Sarah. My family built this place, and I won't let anyone tell me how to run it." Sarah flinched, but held her ground. "Maybe it's time to ask yourself why this place is empty now, Adam. Maybe it's not just about what you want." She walked out before he could respond, leaving him alone with his thoughts. Tensions reached a boiling point when a peaceful protest was organized outside Riverbend Cafe. Residents of Haven Creek, led by James Wer, stood with signs that read "No place for hate and equality for all." Adam watched from the window, his anger simmering beneath the surface. "They're trying to destroy me," he muttered. But as the hours passed, something began to shift among the protesters. Were people Adam had known for years, neighbors, friends, even distant relatives. Their presence forced him to confront a difficult truth. This wasn't just about Henry Walker, this was about the town's soul, and yet Adam's pride kept him rooted in his beliefs. That night, as the protest disbanded, James Walker approached the cafe door and knocked. Adam hesitated before opening it, his face a mask of stubborn defiance. "We need to talk," James said, his voice firm but calm. "I have nothing to say to you," Adam replied coldly. James leaned in slightly, his eyes locking with Adam's. "This isn't going away, Adam. You can either face it head in or let it destroy everything you've worked for." Adam didn't respond, slamming the door in James's face, but as he locked up for the night, the words lingered, gnawing at the edges of his resolve. The atmosphere in Haven Creek had shifted. What began as a quiet incident in a small diner had grown into a town-wide reckoning. The lines were drawn, and the once close-knit community now found itself divided over questions of justice, tradition, and change. At the heart of it all was Adam Cross, who sat in the empty dining area of Riverbend Cafe late one Evening the chairs were stacked neatly, the counter spotless, but the silence was deafening. His once bustling diner was now a ghost town. Adam stared at the framed photograph on the wall, a younger version of himself standing proudly next to his father, the original owner of the cafe. His father's stern expression mirrored Adam's own conflicted thoughts. You're the keeper of this place. His father had always said never let anyone tell you how to run it. But now Adam wondered if those words were a shield he'd been using to avoid the truth. Meanwhile, at the Walker family home, James was laying out his plan to his father Henry and a small group of community leaders. The tension in the room was palpable, but James's voice was steady and resolute. Riverbend Cafe isn't just a business, it's a symbol. James began. Right now it's a symbol of division, but we can change that. We have an opportunity to transform it into something that brings people together. A middle-aged woman, Margaret Phillips, who ran a local veterans organization, leaned forward. What exactly are you proposing, James? James smiled faintly. We buy the diner. The room fell silent. Henry raised an eyebrow. Buy it? You think Adam's going to sell to us after everything that's happened? James nodded. I've done some digging. Adam struggling financially. The cafe hasn't been profitable for years, and he's barely keeping it afloat. If we make him a fair offer, and if it's clear the community supports this transition, I think he'll consider it. Margaret crossed her arms. And if he doesn't, then we keep the pressure on. James replied firmly. Protests, public forums, media attention. But I believe Adam's pride isn't as unshakable as he wants us to think. He's feeling the weight of this already. Henry sighed, his face etched with concern. I don't want this to turn into a war, James. We need to approach this with dignity. James placed a reassuring hand on his father's shoulder. We will, Dad. This isn't about tearing Adam down, it's about building something better for everyone. The next morning Adam walked into the diner to find an envelope slipped under the door. He tore it open to reveal an official letter from a law firm. Inside was an offer to purchase the cafe for nearly double its market value, funded by a coalition of community leaders. Adam's hands trembled as he read the letter. The conditions were clear. He would need to step away from the business entirely, but the offer included a clause allowing him to save face, publicly framing the sale as a personal decision. For the first time in weeks, Adam felt a flicker of relief. Selling the cafe would solve his financial problems and end the public backlash. But as quickly as the relief came, his pride pushed it away. This is my father's legacy, he muttered to himself. I can't just hand it over. Still, the letter gnawed at him. Throughout the day, customers were scarce, and those who did come and avoided his eyes. Even his employees seemed distant there, smiles forced and fleeting. That evening Adam sat at his desk staring at the letter when the door to the office creaked open. His daughter Sarah Cross stood in the doorway. Dad, she said quietly, stepping inside. Can we talk? Adam sighed, gesturing for her to sit. Sarah was studying sociology at a university out of state, and she rarely came home. Seeing her now with a mixture of concern and determination on her face made him feel a pang of guilt. I've heard about what's been happening, Sarah said, her tone careful but firm. Dad, this isn't you. A damp jaw tightened. What do you mean? This isn't me. I'm protecting what's mine. Sarah shook her head. No, you're clinging to something that doesn't matter as much as you think it does. This diner, it's bricks and mortar, Dad. What really matters is the community it's supposed to serve. And right now you're turning people away, not just from the cafe, but from yourself. Adam looked away, his throat tightening. You don't understand. This place was my father's life. I can't just give it up. Sarah reached across the desk, placing her hand over his. Maybe it's time to think about what kind of legacy you want to leave, Dad. One built on exclusion, or one that shows people change? Her words hit Adam harder than he expected. For the first time he allowed himself to consider the possibility that she might be right. A few days later, James Walker arrived at the cafe early in the morning. To his surprise, Adam was waiting for him, standing outside with a letter in hand. Morning, Adam, James said cautiously. Adam glanced at the letter, then back at James. The first got your offer, he said gruffly. You and your people really think you can turn this place around? James met his gaze evenly. We don't just think so, we know so, but we can't do it without you. Adam, a damp brow furrowed. Without me? You want me gone? James shook his head. We don't want to erase your legacy, Adam. We want to build on it. But to do that you need to let go of the hate that's been holding you back. You can be part of the change, or you can keep fighting it. The choice is yours. Adam stood silent for a long moment, the weight of his decision visible on his face. Finally he extended the letter toward James. All right, Adam said, his voice heavy with emotion. But if I do this, it's on my terms. James nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. We can work with it. The next morning Haven Creek woke up to whispers that spread like wildfire. Adam Cross had agreed to sell Riverbend Cafe. The news shocked the town. Some viewed it as a defeat for tradition, while others saw it as the dawn of a brighter, more inclusive future in sie. To the cafe, a small group gathered to finalize the details. James Walker sat at the table with Adam, flanked by representatives from the coalition of community leaders who had backed the purchase. The atmosphere was tense but hopeful. Adam, visibly conflicted, fidgeted with the pen in his hand. His daughter Sarah stood nearby, offering a quiet but reassuring presence. Before I sign this, Adam began, his voice low, I need to say something. All eyes turned to him as he set the pen down. I know I've been stubborn, and I know I've hurt people, Henry Walker. Most of all, I can't undo what I did, but I want to make this right. If this place is going to change, I want to help, not just to save face, but because I need to be better. The room was silent for a moment before James nodded, a small smile on his face. That's all we've ever wanted, Adam Leighton. Make this work together. With that, Adam signed the papers, officially transferring ownership of the cafe. A new chapter was about to begin in the weeks that followed. The community rallied around the effort to transform Riverbend Cafe into something new. The Unity Table, a space dedicated to bringing people together and celebrating diversity. The building underwent renovations with volunteers from across Haven Creek pitching in. Walls were repainted in warm, welcoming tones. The booths were reupholstered and section of the cafe was dedicated to honoring the town's veterans, including Henry Walker and others who had served. The centerpiece was a mile that stretched across the back wall, depicting people of all races, ages, and backgrounds sitting together at a single long table. At the center of the mural were two figures unmistakably modeled after Henry Walker and Adam crossed their hands clasped in a gesture of unity. Adam, true to his word, stayed on as head chef, working alongside a diverse team of employees that included Sarah and even a few new hires from the community. The experience humbled him, forcing him to confront his biases daily and strive for the acceptance he'd once denied others. The day of the grand reopening arrived, and Haven Creek turned out in droves. A red ribbon stretched across the front entrance, and Henry Walker stood at one end holding the scissors. As the crowd quieted, Henry addressed them, his voice steady and clear. This cafe has been a part of our town for generations. It's seen good times and bad, and now it stands as a symbol of what we can achieve when we work together. Today isn't just about a new name or a new menu, it's about a new beginning for all of us. He glanced at Adam, who stood nearby, visibly moved. And I want to thank Adam Cross for having the courage to take this step with us. Change isn't easy, but it's necessary. The crowd erupted into applause as Henry cut the ribbon, officially opening the Unity Table. Inside, the atmosphere was electric. The cafe buzzed with conversation and laughter as people explored the space, many pausing to admire the mural. Old friends reconnected and new friendships began over shared meals. At one table, Henry and Adam sat together, their families joining them. The two men exchanged a quiet look of mutual respect. I never thought I'd see the day. Henry said, a faint smile on his face. Adam chuckled softly. Neither did I. But I'm glad we did. Nearby, James Walker spoke with Margaret Phillips about plans for community events to be hosted at the Unity Table. Discussions included veteran support programs, diversity workshops, and even open mic nights to share personal stories and bridge divides. As word of the Unity Table spread, Haven Creek began to see visitors from neighboring towns curious about the transformation, and inspired by its story, media outlets picked up the tale, framing it as a model for reconciliation in a divided world. For Adam, the journey was far from over. Every day brought new challenges and new opportunities to prove that he was committed to change. Slowly but surely, the town began to see him not as the man who had once shut people out, but as someone working tirelessly to bring them together. One evening, long after the cafe had closed for the day, Henry and Adam sat together in the quiet dining area. The mural cast a soft glow over the room, and the hum of the dishwasher was the only sound. I never thought I'd call this place home again, Henry said, his voice thoughtful. Adam looked at him, a hint of gratitude in his expression. And I never thought I'd get the chance to fix what I broke. Thank you for giving me that chance, Henry. Henry smiled. We've both learned a lot, Adam, and I think this town has too. As they sat there, the sound of laughter and voices from earlier in the evening seemed to linger in the air, a reminder of how far they'd come and the hope that lay ahead. And now join the movement for justice. Subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments, and make these stories a part of your daily life. Together we can create change. The story ends here. If you find it interesting and meaningful, please click like, subscribe, and share to receive the latest videos from the channel. Goodbye, and see you in the next video.